I'd like to segue over to Ukraine, Colonel, and I'd like to do it by running a clip for you. I won't even tell you who this is, but you'll know her. You haven't seen her in a while. Cut number 6. She's back.
I think if the attacks are coming directly from over the line in Russia, that those bases ought to be fair game, whether they are where missiles are being launched from or where they are where troops are being supplied from. I think it's time for that because Russia has obviously escalated this war, including, as you said at the beginning, attacking Russia's second city, Kharkiv, which is not on the front lines, and trying to decimate it without ever having to put a boot on the ground. So I think it is time to give the Ukrainians more help hitting these bases inside Russia.
Crazy woman wants American armaments and ammunition to attack inside Russia.
Well, I was surprised when you said we haven't seen her for a while, and I thought you were going to run a clip of "I Love Lucy" or something. Instead, you
"I Love Lucy" would have made more sense.
Oh, absolutely, and no question about it. Unfortunately, you showed Victoria Nuland at us. This woman is a committed ideologue. Now, she's never going to admit the truth. She's never going to come to terms with the truth. She is going to continue to cling tenaciously to the mountain of lies that she and her ideological fellow travelers have created, who are currently running our country. It's tragic, but that's the way it is. And frankly, she would be delighted if she could pull us in, but I've got news for her. We're not coming. We don't have the capability. Everybody knows it now. It's no longer a secret, Judge. The United States Army is a pitiful remnant of what it was 30 years ago. It's in terrible condition. What are you going to do? Hurl the dwindling Marine Corps designed for amphibious warfare in 1943 at Sevastopol? Of course not. They're not going to do anything. Then you turn to the Air Force that has a readiness rate of only 40 or 50% in its newest aircraft, can't find enough pilots, is trying to recall pilots to fly aircraft. And then there's the Navy. My goodness, we need to decommission carriers. We need to take a new direction in the way we develop and build our naval power. There is no coherent strategy in Washington. Everything is impulse driven. It's all emotion based. She is a perfect example of that. She believes that her ideology tells her that Russia is evil and must be destroyed. Therefore, it will happen. You just continue to scream obscenities at the Russians and scream lies at us, and eventually that's what's going to occur. No, it's not. She's just wasting her time, but more important, she's making us look ridiculous.
Also making us look ridiculous, I would submit, is General Christopher Cavoli, 4-star general, commander of CENTCOM. Correct me, I believe that's all American military in Europe. Saying
yes, yeah, he's
Russia,
the Supreme Commander of Europe.
Okay, Russia
he commands all forces, well, not just U.S. forces, but he's the titular head of all forces in the NATO alliance.
Wow. He's the successor of Eisenhower as Supreme Allied Commander, more or less.
Right. That's exactly right. And that is the title that he possesses, the same one that Eisenhower had at the end of the war.
Wow. So General Cavoli, notwithstanding that nice last name, I couldn't resist.
This must be painful for you, Judge.
Well, it's not painful for me to introduce you to disagree with him, because he says Russia lacks the number of troops and skills, lacks the capability for a breakthrough, and his buddy Admiral Bauer, of whom I've never heard, says Russian troops, this is crazy, are of an inferior quality to American and to Ukrainian troops. I don't know where these two fellows come off with this.
Well, I haven't heard much from Admiral Bauer lately. His name would indicate he's German, but perhaps he's Dutch or Danish. I don't know. But I assume with the name Bauer, he's a German. And obviously he feels compelled to weigh in because the current German leadership in Berlin wants to maintain the fictional facade that we've been discussing for most of our interview. As far as Cavoli is concerned, he's a very disappointing member of the 4-star, 3-star community. All of these people have sold themselves to whomever was willing to promote them. They have eagerly embraced terrible policies that have been detrimental to the interests of the American people and its armed forces. They're presiding over a disaster. He's helped as much as anybody to bring on this catastrophe, and he's routinely lied about the truth. The truth has always been the same. Ukraine can't win. And now, in light of the Russian success and the obvious quality of the Russian force and its weapons and capabilities, tell us that they're inferior or substandard or lacking in anything is absurd. He ought to be grateful that the Russians are completely disinterested in marching to Brussels and Mons to meet him personally, because right now there isn't a hell of a lot out there that we could throw into the fight that would make any damn difference to this Russian army.
Colonel, how does the Russian army compare to the American army?
Well, I should think that would be obvious at this point. The Russian army is a very tough, disciplined, and currently reasonably well-led force. Now, like all armies, when they first take the field, whenever you go to the field for the first time to fight, you run into all sorts of problems that you may or may not have known in advance. The Russians have already been through that. This is 3 years later. These are battle-hardened formations, battle-hardened troops. They have high morale, total confidence in their commanders and leaders. The ones that were poor or weak have been discarded. So they're in a brilliant position. We're in the opposite camp. We have a lot of people that have never done a damn thing, who are pretending to be great men, pretending to be the heirs to Patton's Third Army or Merrill's Marauders or any number of outstanding military formations that performed brilliantly during the Second World War. They aren't. And for them to publicly castigate the Russians, I think is stupid. It's stupid because, once again, we want the war to end. You know, you want it to end and you want to get on with life. And you would like to have some sort of amicable solution with which both we, the Russians, the Ukrainians, and others in Eastern Europe can live. But if you behave this way, this indicates that you have no interest in peace, no interest in a negotiated solution. That's a very dangerous signal to send right now. We are at an all-time low point. I haven't seen our forces and our capabilities at such a low point of strength and power since the early 1970s, Judge.
How did we get to such a low point? We're spending almost $1 trillion a year. You know, I don't want to sound like a member of Congress, because they equate all this money with the defensive greatness. So it's obviously not going to build up the morale and the strength of the troops. Let me alter my question. What you just said, comparing the American military to the Russian, do NATO countries understand this, or do they really think that they can help Ukraine beat Russia and that Putin is bluffing?
You know, that's a good question. I can't give a definitive answer for everybody in Europe. I think it's mixed. I know a number of Germans and some Poles, some Czechs, Hungarians. I don't think that they are delusional. Now, I'm talking about people below the rank of full colonel, people who are largely captains or majors, and I think they have a more realistic view of just what a tough adversary Russia is. So I don't think that's the case. You know, Friedrich Nietzsche, the great German philosopher of the modern world, he said something that we should always keep in mind. War makes the victor stupid. And in 1991, we had, by any stretch of the imagination, certainly by modern standards, a relatively easy victory. Now, we can say that that victory was more easily achieved than we thought because we were so much better equipped, better organized, better trained, and so forth. I think that's true partially. We also did not fight one of the best armies in the world. It was large. It had a lot of capability that it never used very effectively. But it also wasn't the Soviet Third Guards Tank Army. It was certainly not, the Waffen-SS Panzer Corps. So we came out of that war and we decided, and of course this is reflected in Wolfowitz's famous memorandum, that we now refer to in retrospect as a sort of unipolar strategy. We came out of it with the view that we could pretty much bully anybody we wanted to, that no one out there could really stand against us. But at the same time, the force itself atrophied. Not only did it grow smaller, although we never reduced the numbers of generals, obviously, we in fact added numbers of generals while we were reducing by hundreds of thousands people that could actually fight and deploy and fight. But I think we then tinkered with the force. We made decisions that were short term, that were designed to pour money into silver bullet technology, most of which never worked. I mean, just within the last couple of days, articles are coming out indicating that the Army, much like the Navy some time ago, concluded that investing in laser technology was probably a waste of money. Well, there were a lot of people that looked at this and said, yes, for the moment it is. And we shouldn't hang much on it. But the generals have behaved as children in Toys R Us. You'll remember that old store? They could go into the defense industry and they would be handed limitless quantities of cash by Congress to go buy whatever they wanted. In the meantime, the forces themselves grew smaller, remained anachronistic, if not antiquated. And today, if you look at the Army in particular, it wants to refight World War II again. It wants to default back to organizations and ways of doing business that we had in 1944. It's unbelievable. The Navy isn't much better off. And I think the Marines, they've now gone down to Dream World to become rocketeers, and they're trying to organize against one enemy that they may likely never fight. I could go on and on. Then the Air Force, of course, pours enormous quantities of money into super manned aircraft, and they're not performing up to expectation. So it's a large problem, and we're in no position right now to go into a major war with anybody. If we do, we risk almost certain defeat.
A brilliant off-the-cuff analysis, Colonel, if I may say so, of the deplorable state of American defenses. Does the West understand, I alluded to this earlier, does the West understand that when President Putin makes a threat, he is not bluffing?
I would hope so. But clearly, there's still evidence that people don't get it. And this is not new. Sometimes, no matter what kind of evidence is presented to the contrary, threats are not taken seriously. Genghis Khan famously attacked states and peoples across Central Asia who had injured or murdered or mistreated his ambassadors. He never struck without a reason to do so. But what he found over and over and over again was that his victims fell to the same tactics that had worked so brilliantly previously. And the capability and the power of his force was never fully appreciated until it was too late. So to some extent, I think we are viewing the rest of the world through the same lens. In fact, I hear it all the time when you talk about economics and finance. Oh, don't be ridiculous. Why would anybody take the BRICS seriously? We're the financial hegemon. No one can do business without us. Our dollar is indispensable. Well, I think we're finding out that that's not true.
You're right, Colonel. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your analysis on such a broad array of issues, my dear friend. Look forward to seeing you next week.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Judge.
Thank you, Colonel.
Have a good Memorial Day weekend.
Oh, thanks. You too. God bless your family, Colonel.
Same to you.